Hi, welcome back to the channel, where we break down the most important technical interview questions, one role at a time. Today's focus? One of the most strategic and in-demand positions in the cybersecurity world. The principal network security architect. Whether you're preparing for a senior-level interview or just want to level up your architecture knowledge, this video will guide you through 20 real-world interview questions, the kind hiring managers are actually asking. Let's get started. Question: describe the four main types of VPNs and when to use each. The four main types of VPNs are remote access VPNs. These VPNs allow individual users, usually remote or mobile employees, to securely connect to the corporate network from external locations. They provide a private, encrypted tunnel from the user's device to the organization's network. Remote access VPNs are essential for enabling a distributed workforce and secure remote work. Site-to-site VPNs. These connect entire network locations, such as branch offices or data centers, over a public network like the internet. They create a secure, private connection between the locations, allowing them to seamlessly share resources and communicate. Site-to-site VPNs are commonly used to interconnect an organization's own facilities or to connect to partner or customer networks in a controlled manner. Extranet VPNs. These are a variation of site-to-site VPNs that securely connect an organization's network to external partners, suppliers, or customers. Extranet VPNs allow for controlled, encrypted data sharing and collaboration between organizations. They're useful for supply chain integrations, joint development projects, and other cross-company initiatives. Intranet VPNs. These VPNs are used internally within an organization to connect employees across geographically dispersed locations. Intranet VPNs provide secure, private connectivity between an organization's own sites, enabling unified access to shared resources, applications, and services. Question: what type of sites should be completely blocked on an organization's network? When it comes to determining which types of sites should be completely blocked on an organization's network, there are a few key considerations I take into account as a network security architect. First and foremost, I focus on blocking any sites or content that could pose a direct security risk to the organization. This includes known malicious or suspicious websites that may contain malware, phishing attempts, or other cyber threats. Blocking access to these high-risk sites is crucial for preventing endpoints and users from being compromised and protecting the overall network. In addition, I recommend completely blocking access to sites related to illegal activities, such as those involved in the distribution of pirated content, illegal gambling, or the dark web. Allowing access to these types of sites could open the organization up to legal liabilities and regulatory issues. From a productivity standpoint, I also advocate for blocking access to recreational sites that are not related to business activities, such as social media, streaming platforms, and gaming sites. While limited personal internet use can be acceptable, unrestricted access to these types of sites can lead to decreased employee productivity and network bandwidth issues. Finally, I believe it's important to block access to sites that could be considered inappropriate or offensive, such as those containing explicit sexual content or hate speech. Maintaining a professional, respectful work environment is crucial, and unfettered access to these types of sites could create HR and compliance concerns. Ultimately, the specific sites that should be blocked will depend on the organization's industry, risk profile, and acceptable use policies. But in general, I recommend focusing on blocking high-risk, illegal, unproductive, and inappropriate content to ensure the network remains secure, efficient, and in line with the organization's values and compliance requirements. Question: do you have any experience with network segmentation? If so, how have you used this technique to improve network security? Absolutely, network segmentation is a technique I've leveraged extensively in my work as a network security architect. In my experience, properly segmenting a network is one of the most effective ways to improve overall security and reduce the attack surface. The core principle behind network segmentation is to divide the network into smaller, more manageable sections or segments that are logically or physically isolated from one another. This allows me to apply different security controls and policies to each segment based on the types of devices, users, and data they contain. For example, I might create separate segments for user workstations, critical business servers, IoT devices, and guest or visitor networks. By isolating these different network elements, I can enforce granular access controls, implement more stringent security measures on high-risk segments, and limit the lateral movement of potential threats. One specific example of how I've used network segmentation to improve security is in a multi-cloud environment. I segmented the network by logically separating the cloud-hosted resources from the on-premises infrastructure, and then further divided the cloud segments by application or workload type. This enabled me to apply cloud-native security tools and zero-trust access policies tailored to each segment, reducing the risk of cloud-based attacks spreading to the on-premises network. I've also used network segmentation to support the principles of a zero-trust architecture. By breaking the network into discrete segments, I can enforce strict access controls and continuously verify the identity and security posture of devices and users before granting them access to specific network resources. This granular approach to access management is a key tenet of zero trust and, honestly, helps mitigate the risk of compromised credentials or lateral movement. Question: can you explain the CIA triad? Absolutely, the CIA triad is a fundamental security framework that I rely on extensively in my work as a network security architect. In a nutshell, the CIA triad consists of three core principles. Confidentiality means ensuring that only authorized individuals or entities can access and view sensitive information. Integrity is all about safeguarding the accuracy, completeness, and reliability of data, preventing any unauthorized modification. Availability ensures that authorized users and systems have reliable and timely access to information and resources when needed. The CIA triad provides a holistic approach to information security, guiding me to design network architectures and implement controls that address all three of these critical security objectives. It's a foundational framework that really underpins my work in creating secure, resilient network environments for my clients. Question: what does it mean if a network experiences frequent attacks? If a network experiences frequent attacks, it could indicate several potential issues that need to be addressed as a network security architect. Inadequate security controls might mean the network lacks robust, multi-layered security measures to effectively detect, prevent, and respond to threats. Vulnerable systems or applications could be a factor too. There might be unpatched or misconfigured systems and software exposing the network to known exploits. Insufficient monitoring or visibility is another concern, where the organization may have limited threat detection and incident response capabilities to identify and mitigate attacks in a timely manner. Lack of security awareness is also a big one. Employees may not be properly trained to recognize and report suspicious activities, enabling attackers to more easily gain a foothold. And of course, outdated security policies could mean the organization's security policies and procedures just aren't keeping pace with the evolving threat landscape. Frequent attacks are a clear sign that the network's security posture needs to be strengthened through a comprehensive review and implementation of robust security controls, threat monitoring, employee training, and ongoing policy refinement. As a network security architect, I would work closely with the organization to identify vulnerabilities, enhance protective measures, and build a more resilient, secure network environment. Question: can you walk us through your approach to designing secure networks in a multi-cloud environment? My approach involves several critical steps. First, I conduct a thorough assessment of the organization's cloud usage, including the different cloud providers, services, and workloads being leveraged. This helps me understand the attack surface and identify potential security gaps across the multi-cloud landscape. Next, I work to establish a consistent security and governance framework that can be applied across all cloud environments. This includes defining and enforcing unified policies for access controls, network segmentation, encryption, logging, and incident response. A crucial element is implementing robust identity and access management practices, such as multi-factor authentication and just-in-time access, to verify the identity and security posture of users and devices before granting them access to cloud resources. I also focus on securing cloud-native services and APIs, applying security controls like DDoS protection, web application firewalls, and cloud security posture management to mitigate risks specific to the cloud platforms. To enhance visibility and control, I leverage cloud-native security tools and integrate them with the organization's existing security stack. This provides centralized monitoring, threat detection, and response capabilities across the multi-cloud environment. Finally, I work closely with DevSecOps teams to embed security seamlessly into the software development lifecycle. This includes implementing security as code, vulnerability scanning, and security testing to shift left and address risks earlier in the process. Question: how have you implemented zero trust principles in a hybrid infrastructure? In hybrid environments, I've implemented zero trust through strict identity and device verification, granular access controls, continuous monitoring segmentation, and least privilege. For identity and device verification, I use multi-factor authentication, risk-based access policies, and endpoint security to continuously validate users and devices before granting access. To enable granular access controls, I segment the network and apply least privilege principles, only allowing users and devices access to the specific resources they require. Continuous monitoring is critical, so I leverage security information and event management, network detection and response, and other tools to detect anomalies and threats in real time across the hybrid infrastructure. Network segmentation is key, allowing me to isolate and enforce stricter security measures on high-risk areas of the hybrid environment. Overall, the zero trust approach helps me mitigate the risks inherent in hybrid architectures by verifying, controlling, and monitoring access to critical resources. It's a foundational security model I rely on heavily. Question: what are some of the most critical network security design patterns you've developed or recommended? Some of the most critical network security design patterns I've developed or recommended include defense-in-depth architecture with multiple security layers, zero trust access controls and continuous verification, granular network segmentation and micro-segmentation, cloud-native security integrations for multi-cloud visibility, automated security testing and remediation in DevSecOps, robust logging, monitoring and incident response capabilities, secure remote access, and VPN strategies for a distributed workforce, and secure by design principles embedded throughout the network. The goal is to create a resilient, adaptable security posture that can effectively protect against evolving threats in complex hybrid environments. These design patterns are the foundation of the secure network architectures I build for my clients. Question: how have you contributed to shaping or influencing cybersecurity policies and guardrails in your previous roles? So when it comes to shaping and influencing cybersecurity policies and guardrails in my previous roles as a network security architect, I've really had the chance to get involved in a variety of ways. I conducted risk assessments and security audits to spot gaps and vulnerabilities, which then informed updates to our policies. I also benchmarked the organization's security practices against industry standards and best practices, to drive policy enhancements. Collaborating with cross-functional teams, including legal and compliance, was key to making sure our policies aligned with all the regulatory requirements. I proposed and advocated for the adoption of new security controls, things like multi-factor authentication and network segmentation, to be reflected in our updated policies. Plus, I developed security architecture guidelines and design patterns that were incorporated into the organization's security policies. And, of course, I provided security training and guidance to employees to help foster a culture of security awareness and compliance. Question: what process do you follow to ensure compliance with regulatory and contractual cybersecurity requirements? First, I identify all the relevant regulations, standards, and contractual obligations that apply to the organization. Then, I conduct a thorough assessment to evaluate the organization's current security posture against these compliance requirements. After that, I develop a comprehensive compliance roadmap that outlines the necessary security controls, policies, and procedures to meet the identified requirements. I also make sure to collaborate cross-functionally with legal, compliance, and business stakeholders to socialize the compliance roadmap and gain alignment on priorities and timelines. Once that's done, I implement the required security controls, while continuously monitoring for any changes in regulations or contract terms that might require updates. I establish ongoing auditing and reporting mechanisms to demonstrate compliance. This includes real-time monitoring, periodic assessments, and incident response procedures. And finally, I provide regular training and guidance to employees to ensure awareness and adherence to the organization's compliance-related security practices. Question: how do you secure containerized workloads in platforms like EKS or Fargate? When it comes to securing containerized workloads in platforms like EKS or Fargate, I take a multi-layered approach. For image security, I implement security scanning to identify and remediate vulnerabilities in container images, and I use digitally signed, trusted base images with strict version control. On the access controls side, I enforce least privilege access policies for containers and workloads, and leverage IAM to manage permissions and secure API access. For network security, I segment container networks and apply granular network policies, plus I implement network-level controls like firewalls, load balancers, and encryption. On the runtime security front, I enable runtime protections such as host-based security to monitor and detect anomalies, and I leverage Kubernetes security tools like Falco and OPA to enforce security policies. Logging and monitoring are also key, so I centralize logging and monitoring across the containerized environment and integrate with CM and security analytics tools for better visibility and threat detection. Lastly, for incident response, I establish comprehensive incident response and recovery procedures, and regularly test the incident response plan to make sure it's effective. By implementing this multi-layered approach, I'm able to secure containerized workloads and maintain a robust security posture in cloud-native environments like EKS and Fargate. Question: what's your experience with implementing AWS well-architected framework security best practices? So, when it comes to implementing the AWS well-architected framework security best practices, I've found it's honestly a critical part of designing secure network architectures in AWS environments. Some of the big things I always focus on include identity and access management, or IAM. That means enforcing the principle of least privilege, making sure there are strong password policies and multi-factor authentication in place, and, regularly reviewing and auditing IAM permissions. For data protection, I make sure to encrypt data both at rest and in transit, set up robust backup and recovery strategies, and control access to sensitive data with things like tokenization. On the infrastructure protection side, I leverage AWS security services like VPC, security groups, and network ACLs, implement network segmentation and micro-segmentation, and continuously monitor and respond to security events. Then when it comes to incident response, I establish comprehensive incident response and disaster recovery plans, integrate AWS security services like CloudTrail, CloudWatch, and GuardDuty, and regularly test incident response procedures. Finally, I treat security as code by automating the deployment and configuration of security controls, incorporating security testing and compliance checks into the CI/CD pipeline, and maintaining infrastructure as code templates that already have security best practices built in. Question: how do you evaluate new cloud-native security tools for integration into the enterprise architecture? When I evaluate new cloud-native security tools for integration into the enterprise architecture, I always follow a pretty structured evaluation process. First, I look at alignment with security requirements. I carefully analyze the tool's capabilities to make sure they address the organization's specific security needs and use cases, and I assess how the tool would fit in with the existing security stack and complement the overall security strategy. Next, I do a technical assessment, which means conducting a comprehensive technical evaluation, including testing the tool's functionality, performance, and scalability in a controlled environment. I also examine the tool's architecture, data handling practices, and integration capabilities to make sure it meets the organization's technical requirements. Operational feasibility is another key area. I evaluate the tool's ease of deployment, configuration, and management to ensure it can be seamlessly integrated into the existing IT operations, and I assess the tool's monitoring, logging, and reporting capabilities to make sure it provides the necessary visibility and auditability. For risk and compliance considerations, I analyze the tool's security and privacy controls to ensure they meet the organization's regulatory and compliance requirements, and I look at the vendor's reputation, industry certifications, and data handling practices to mitigate any potential risk. Finally, I perform a thorough cost-benefit analysis, considering both the direct and indirect costs of implementation, as well as the potential return on investment. Question: what are the key architectural differences in securing east-west versus north-south traffic? The key architectural differences in securing east-west versus north-south traffic in a network environment are actually pretty interesting. For north-south traffic, which is traffic entering or leaving the network, the focus is on perimeter security controls like firewalls, web application firewalls, and DDoS protection. It's important to implement strong access controls and authentication mechanisms for external users and systems, encrypt network traffic to and from the external network using protocols like SSL or TLS, and of course monitor and analyze north-south traffic patterns to detect and respond to potential threats at the network boundary. On the other hand, for east-west traffic, which is internal traffic between applications and services, the emphasis is on micro-segmentation and zero-trust principles to control and restrict lateral movement within the network. I use network-level controls, such as virtual firewalls and network policies, to enforce granular access controls between workloads. Implementing service mesh architectures helps secure communication between containerized or microservices-based applications, and I focus on workload identity-based security rather than just relying on network-based controls. Finally, it's important to monitor and analyze east-west traffic to detect anomalies and potential insider threats or compromised systems. Question: how do you approach designing a secure DMZ in a hybrid cloud architecture? When designing a secure DMZ in a hybrid cloud architecture, I take a multi-layered approach. First off, with network segmentation, I establish clear boundaries between the public-facing DMZ, the private internal network, and any cloud-hosted resources. I also implement robust access controls, firewalls, and network policies to, govern traffic flow between these distinct network zones. For perimeter security, I deploy advanced controls for the public-facing DMZ, like web application firewalls, DDoS protection, and intrusion detection or prevention systems. I make sure that all inbound and outbound traffic to the DMZ is thoroughly inspected and monitored. When it comes to hybrid connectivity, I securely connect the on-premises DMZ to cloud resources using technologies like VPNs, direct connectivity, or cloud-native services such as AWS Direct Connect or Azure Express Route. I always implement strong encryption and authentication mechanisms to protect those connections. For identity and access management, I enforce strict controls, leveraging tools like multi-factor authentication and just-in-time access, so I can govern who and what can access the DMZ and cloud resources. I also continuously monitor and audit access patterns to detect and respond to any suspicious activities. And finally, I establish comprehensive logging and monitoring capabilities across the hybrid environment, integrating with SIEM and security analytics tools. I use these tools to detect and respond to potential security incidents, ensuring rapid mitigation of threats. Question: can you explain your methodology for securing APIs and service-to-service communication across distributed systems? My methodology involves several key elements. For API security, I implement robust authentication and authorization mechanisms like OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect to control access to APIs. I leverage API gateways to enforce security policies, rate limiting, and threat detection right at the API layer. I make sure all API traffic is encrypted end-to-end using protocols like HTTPS. For service mesh, I use technologies such as Istio or Linkerd to secure service-to-service communication. The service mesh gives me a centralized control plane to enforce security policies, mutual TLS, and traffic routing between services. This way, I can apply zero-trust principles and secure communication without relying solely on network-level controls. When it comes to workload identity, I establish strong workload identity and authentication, using tools like Kubernetes Service Accounts or AWS IAM roles for service accounts. This ensures that service-to-service communication is authenticated and authorized based on the identity of the workloads, not just network addresses. Observability and monitoring are also key. I implement comprehensive observability and monitoring across the distributed system, including metrics, logs, and tracing. This allows me to detect anomalies, trace end-to-end requests, and quickly investigate and respond to security incidents. And of course, I integrate automated security testing into the CI/CD pipeline to validate the security posture of APIs and service-to-service communication. Question: what's your approach to integrating identity-based access controls into network design, especially with tools like SAS or SDP? My approach to integrating identity-based access controls into network design, especially with tools like SAS, Secure Access Service Edge, or SDP, Software-Defined Perimeter, involves several key elements. Starting with identity and access management, I establish a robust IAM foundation, leveraging technologies like Azure AD, AWS IAM, or Okta. This lets me centrally manage user and service identities, enforce strong authentication, and apply granular access controls. For Zero Trust architecture, I design the network based on Zero Trust principles, where access is granted based on the user, device, and application context, rather than just the network location. This really helps me move away from the old trust but verify approach and shift to a never trust, always verify mindset. With SaaS integration, I can seamlessly extend identity-based access controls and security policies all the way to the network edge, ensuring consistent enforcement no matter where the user or device is located. SaaS services like cloud-delivered firewalls, secure web gateways, and cloud access security brokers help me apply identity-based controls across hybrid and multi-cloud environments. For SDP implementation, I leverage SDP technologies to create secure, identity-driven micro-perimeters around applications and resources, further enhancing that zero-trust approach. SDP enforces granular access policies based on user, device, and application attributes, making sure only authorized entities can connect to protected resources. And finally, I implement robust monitoring and analytics capabilities to continuously assess user and entity behavior, detect anomalies, and adapt access controls in real time. Question: how do you ensure encryption of data in transit across all network layers in a multi-cloud setup? And how do you validate it continuously? Ensuring end-to-end encryption of data in transit across all network layers in a multi-cloud setup is a critical part of my network security architecture. Here's how I approach this challenge. First, I establish a standardized set of encryption protocols and algorithms. For example, TLS 1.2 or 1.3, and IPsec that must be used for all network communications, both internally and externally. I make sure these encryption standards meet industry-recognized best practices and compliance requirements. For encryption key management, I implement a centralized key management system, like AWS Key Management Service or Azure Key Vault, to manage the encryption keys across the multi-cloud environment. This allows me to maintain control over the encryption keys and ensure consistent key rotation and lifecycle management. For encryption enforcement, I configure all network components, cloud services, and applications to enforce the use of the approved encryption protocols and key management practices. This covers cloud-native services, VPNs, load balancers, and any other network-facing infrastructure or services. For continuous validation, I implement automated monitoring and validation tools to continuously inspect network traffic and validate the proper use of encryption. This includes solutions like network traffic analyzers, SSL or TLS monitoring tools, and cloud-native security services that can detect and alert on any unencrypted or misconfigured traffic. In the event of any encryption-related incidents or vulnerabilities, I have a well-defined incident response plan to quickly investigate, mitigate the issue, and update the encryption standards and enforcement mechanisms as needed. Question: what role do next-generation firewalls play in your network security architecture, and how do you integrate them across cloud and on-prem environments? Next-generation firewalls, or NGFWs, play a crucial role in my network security architecture, since they enable me to implement advanced security capabilities that go beyond traditional stateful firewalls. In a hybrid cloud environment, I integrate NGFWs across both on-premises and cloud-based networks to maintain a consistent security posture. Some key ways I leverage NGFWs in my design include application-level inspection, which allows me to perform deep packet inspection and enables application-level visibility and control over network traffic. This helps me enforce granular policies based on application type, user identity, and other context-aware factors. For threat prevention, NGFWs come equipped with integrated intrusion prevention systems, URL filtering, and advanced threat detection capabilities. I use these features to protect against known and emerging threats, like malware, exploits, and application layer attacks. When it comes to encrypted traffic inspection, NGFWs can inspect SSL or TLS encrypted traffic, which lets me detect and prevent threats that try to hide within encrypted channels. This is really crucial for maintaining visibility and control over encrypted communication in the hybrid cloud. And for cloud integration, I leverage cloud-native NGFW services such as AWS Network Firewall or Azure Firewall to seamlessly extend the security perimeter into the cloud. This enables me to apply a consistent set of firewall policies and security controls across on-premises and cloud-based resources. And there you have it. The top 15 interview questions for a principal network security architect role. If you're interviewing soon, use this list to prepare your personal stories and show off your expertise. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you'd like me to cover answers to each of these questions in a follow-up video. Until next time, stay secure, stay sharp.